Hello and welcome to today's podcast, where we'll be discussing the ways oral dosage forms can enhance the commercial value of biologic therapies. In our last podcast, we discussed the latest advances in formulation and delivery technologies and how these are making oral formulation of biologics potentially clinically viable. If you missed it, it's still available by scanning the QR code and is well worth a listen. Today, we'll be focusing on the commercial opportunities presented by successful oral formulation, both corporately and in sales revenue. The pharmaceutical industry is a high risk and reward business, with pharmaceutical companies typically reinvesting 25 to 30% of turnover in research and development. The odds of success aren't great, with the ratio of candidate molecules to clinically approved therapies often as low as 1 in 5,000. But when a new drug shows promise, do formulators consider how best to maximize its commercial value and invest sufficiently in developing the dosage form that maximizes its market potential? In 2017, Novo Nordisk's semaglutide-based Ozempic gained clinical approval for type 2 diabetes glycemic control and subsequently label extensions to reduce cardiac events and kidney failure risk in cardiocompromised and CKD type 2 diabetes patients. This was swiftly followed by a successful oral dosage formulation, Rybelsus, approved for type 2 diabetes glycemic control in 2019 and in 2025 to reduce the risk of major cardiac events in type 2 diabetes patients. The approval of an oral dosage form and label extensions coincided with the rapid growth in Novo Nordisk's share price. Between 2019 and 2023, their stock rose from around $77 a share to $100 a share. The oral dosage form, Rybelsus, alone generated $2.7 billion in sales in 2023, adding to the $14 billion sales for Ozempic. But with recent warnings of increased price competition, the impact of the US vaccinations deals, and impending patent expiries for semaglutide in India and China, Novo Nordisk's share price has fallen 18% in the past few days, showing how inextricably linked perceived formulation value is to investor sentiment. Biologic therapies have grown in importance in pharmaceutical drug pipelines, and as Rybelsus has shown, oral formulations add value. However, historically, achieving clinically viable oral bioavailability for biologics has been perceived as challenging and potentially unachievable. Complex molecules based on proteins and peptides are particularly vulnerable to degradation in the gut, from both acidity in the stomach and enzymic action in the intestine. They also typically exhibit low epithelial uptake and absorption. As we discussed in our last podcast, recent advances in capsule and formulation technologies have made delivering more subclasses of biologics orally potentially achievable with clinically viable levels of bioavailability. The many advantages of oral dosage forms and their potential to extend access to biologic therapies to new and often underserved patient cohorts presents an opportunity for pharmaceutical companies to maximize both the therapeutic and commercial value of this important class of drugs. To discuss this topic, I'm joined today by Frank Romanski, PhD, Head of Global Pharma Solutions at Lonza Capsugel. Frank brings a unique perspective on this subject, having started his own career in chemical engineering and formulation science. He's subsequently gone on to hold senior leadership roles in technical, product management and business development, and today leads the Lonza Capsugel pharmaceutical business unit. Hello Frank, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
So just taking my initial premise, I guess, share prices in the pharmaceutical industry are driven by investor sentiment and can be very volatile and clearly influenced by clinical trial results, new therapy approvals, and even mode of administration. Do you think product managers fully consider or are aware of the potential commercial implications of decisions made on dosage form?
So I'm going to take that question in two different parts. From a scientific perspective, when we're talking about the formulators, this is a puzzle. And the molecules that you described before are very, very challenging to actually get adequate and effective oral delivery of these APIs. And I think that the formulator scientists in general are really focused on that puzzle in general, because it is one that's very complex. And as a scientist myself, it's something that's inherently challenging. And they understand the downstream consequences of these challenges, meaning that you're actually providing a meaningful service to patients that ultimately cannot, or in some cases simply will not, take an injectable type dosage form. That translates into what you would call the product management or the program management type side of things. I think that absolutely they're aware of what that impact is. And I think about that in terms of something that I would call just simply the TAM, or the total addressable market. In the total addressable market of patients for a given class of medicines, you want to, as a business, try and maximize how many patients can ultimately have that medicine. There are estimates of upwards of 20% of the population that simply will never take an injectable medicine, no matter how important that medicine might be. And as we talk about medicines that are in the obesity, the diabetes, the cardiovascular space, and there are other options, that's a real challenge that I think formulators and program managers are ultimately looking at. So that's a patient population that the pharmaceutical companies in general as a whole want to go after. They want to expand their TAM, their total addressable market, and get this drug into more patients' hands. And for very good reason. These medicines that we're talking about today actually have many downstream consequences as well on reducing secondary and tertiary effects from diabetes, from obesity, etc., and cardiovascular disease. So this is something that I think is inherent to the pharmaceutical companies. Now, to your point, they're absolutely in competition with one another, but they're in competition to actually get patients on these medicines that ultimately treat the primary as well as the secondary and tertiary diseases in this space. And everybody's trying to work together to take these very challenging molecules and get them to patients that normally would not have access or even be able to see some of those injectable versions of these medicines.
And it sort of brings me back to the starting thought. I mean, my belief would be, and indeed, much of the previous evidence and research into oral formulation of biologics has proved it is a big challenge. You say, do you think there's a dilemma though in terms of the pressure to bring new drugs into clinical trial and get approval versus investing a bit more time to see if oral forms are feasible?
It's a great question, but I think there's also a physics and chemistry barrier that we're up against a bit. So when we talk about oral biologics, let's be very clear about this, because it's the way that we're thinking about it as Lonza Capsugel is actually quite broad, and perhaps that definition changes depending on your perspective. To a small molecule chemist who's traditionally worked in small molecule oral delivery, having even the smallest amount of peptide attached to your molecule now makes this a biologic, quote unquote. However, to somebody who formulates monoclonal antibodies, looking at these small chain peptides is nothing, right? And they're barely considered a biologic in nature. So the formulation science that goes into this runs into these physical chemical barriers inside your gut, quite frankly. So even as you described in your intro, there are very sophisticated technological ways that we've worked on to protect these molecules and encapsulate them and get them delivered to where they need to go. But only some of them actually have an appreciable amount of absorption in the gut. And these are very, very small percentages. And that can mean wasted API, loss of effectiveness, etc. So there are a lot of technologies that are being worked on in this space to be able to bypass some of those physical chemical barriers and to be able to get medicines into the body and into the areas of the body that need to work. So this is an active area of science and something that we're putting a lot of energy and innovation into.
Again, you mentioned there that biologics is a very broad church, and as you say, some of the simpler molecules are proving viable, the GLP-1s being a great case in point. I guess also there is certain therapies which you're either looking for systemic bioavailability or a localized effect, and I guess oral targeting for certain diseases is almost an imperative.
Yeah, and let's take the GLP-1s as a great example of this. This is one of the hottest areas of pharmaceutics right now, to be clear. And you have the big players and the small players that are all going after these different patient populations. And what's really interesting about it, when you think about it, the injectable versions of GLP-1s tend to be fairly bioavailable, 60 to 80%, let's just say in round numbers. When you start to take those medicines orally, and Rybelsus is a good example of that, you're now in the low single digits. Now, API in this space is actually quite scarce, right? And you can see that from a lot of the very large M&A deals that had gone on over the past months and years to actually gain access to the full value chain to be able to produce GLP-1s. And yet, it's so enticing to expand that total addressable market that people are very much investing in oral technologies, knowing full well that 98% of that API is fully wasted, right? So I think that's very indicative to me how important that TAM is in this space. And that gives you an indication as to how much investment and innovation can take place in the space of oral delivery in this biologic space. Everything from very, very small chain peptides and GLP-1s all the way through large biomolecules, including, but not limited to, live biotherapeutics, for example.
You've moved another dimension there of the commerciality, because of course, oral delivery, particularly of sensitive molecules, does result in a lot of wastage. And I guess for lower cost therapies, that's not an issue. But when you get into some of the more sophisticated APIs, it becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So, in terms of Lonza Capsugel, I know that you've led the way in many capsule and formulation innovations, and particularly all dosage technologies as a whole. I noticed you most recently added a CDMO facility in Tampa to your portfolio of research and development sites. How do you think this will change your capability and proposition to your customers?
That's a great question. We have really built out and invested in our formulation capabilities, starting with our InnovaForm Acceleration Center that is based in Colmar, France. This is where we have leading formulation scientists, engineers, and technologists that can actually take these very, very challenging molecules, small molecules, peptides, MABs, quite frankly, as well as live biotherapeutics, and work on highly customized technologies to bring them to market in an encapsulated dosage form. We can do that at that site specifically, and we can also scale up those technologies so that we can provide commercial quantities of very, very sophisticated and very customized capsule technology. What's unique about adding our Tampa facility is now we have the ability to tech transfer those programs, those formulations directly into the clinic in a GMP environment. So many of the customers that we're working with are also looking for commercialization partners that can help them get into the clinic, produce their commercial batches, start to help with their scale up, their regulatory, their quality needs, and ultimately a place that can also be their commercial manufacturing hub. And that's the synergy that we gain out of those two sites in particular, the ability to tech transfer the science and the formulation and quite frankly, the capsule technology to a site that has the ability to commercialize and quite frankly, a really well-proven commercial track record of commercializing drugs within a core market.
And that intimacy, if you like, between the research and actually being able to manufacture a batch product for clinical trials, that must also have an impact on the timelines between the innovation stage and clinical trial.
Absolutely. And think about how much time gets spent on the formulation side of things, the ability to keep that all within one house and to combine the expertise between the formulation hubs that we have and the technology that we have with the encapsulation products, so the capsules themselves, as well as the encapsulation machines, which many cases we're manufacturing ourselves, both for clinical side as well as the full scale-up version of that, as well as the partners that we work with in our alliance in encapsulation type technology.
And given that focus that you have on innovation and research, are you exploring new and perhaps novel technologies that will support oral delivery?
This is an area, I think, of really exciting science and something that 10 years ago wasn't even dreamed of, and quite frankly is now a bit more of the holy grail. So as I mentioned a few comments ago, there are physical chemical barriers to how you can deliver some of these complex molecules. And they could be complex because they're very sensitive, and they could be complex because they're large and they simply cannot penetrate into the gut and have any appreciable amount of efficacy. So take an example of monoclonal antibody. The idea of taking a monoclonal antibody that would go systemic in the gut, how do you actually accomplish that? And the answer is that there are a number of technologies that we are working on, partnering with, in the market, playing with, that actually are these encapsulated device type technologies that allow for basically a physical penetration of the gut wall that allow for those large molecules that normally would have zero efficacy to actually go systemic. Those are the technologies that I think are quite interesting, and they're also quite a challenge to scale up. There will be a challenge from a regulatory perspective and how they're actually positioned, but this is a truly novel area of science because, again, what I mentioned before about the total addressable market, that applies also to people that need to take monoclonal antibody therapies. Imagine taking those types of therapies in an oral manner and bypassing the clinic, bypassing the need to go to hospitals, bypassing the need for self-injection. This is tremendous from a patient compliance perspective and the ability to treat more patients, which I think all of us in the pharmaceutical industry are looking to do, to treat more people with the drugs that we're producing and to solve some of these core challenges.
No, I think that's a really interesting perspective in terms of the example you gave of some of the device categories, which would, I guess, are new to Lonza Capsugel and are new in the market. Do you see yourselves as becoming incubators for these new technologies and investing in proprietary mechanisms yourself and formulation strategies?
So I think from a Lonza Capsugel perspective, we're certainly working with a tremendous amount of partners in the formulation space. We do that. We start really in Colmar. That is where we have customers that are and clients that are looking to take very, very challenging molecules and combine them with encapsulation type technologies. And when they're ready to go into the clinic is when we are working with them in our Tampa facility. This is an area of scientific interest for us, of innovation interest with us, and building out platform technologies. I'll give you a simple example of how this might work within an encapsulation technology. We have a very good commercial example on the shelf of our N-Protect, which is, again, a dual-layered capsule that has the ability to bypass the stomach and to target specifically the gut to release these molecules. Now, many companies that are working in oral peptides, oral biologics, are already using those molecules. But let's be clear, this is the off-the-shelf version. And if that works for you, fantastic. But the teams that we have are actually able to customize that for the needs of the molecule and of the client themselves. So we can target the colon, we can target the ileum, you can target the duodenum, etc. Depending on what the needs are, you can also encapsulate different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a solid, it could also be a liquid, it could have different types of penetration enhancers, which inherently will change the structural ability of a capsule type technology. So the scientists that we're working with have the ability to actually take that technology and produce something highly customized for that formulation. And then you couple that with our ability to commercialize it and to get in the clinic with our Tampa facilities, you really have a winning proposition for many of the partners that struggle with these very challenging molecules.
That's fascinating. I'd heard about N-Protect. I didn't realize that it was such a customizable platform. And you say, I've heard the expression used in active delivery systems, you say highly bespoke, all designed, I guess, to gain incremental benefit in terms of the potential bioavailability and actually tailored to the needs of a particular API. It's all fascinating stuff, and I didn't appreciate how far technology had been pushed forward. In terms of existing biologic therapies and so forth, many of them oral dosage forms were really not on the table as an option at the time. But given the technological advances, do you think that existing biologics, particularly those coming out of patent, will represent a market for you to work in partnership to develop oral formulations?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's exclusive to those that are coming off patent. I think when you look at the innovators in this space that already have existing small molecule, biologic, peptides, etc., they are looking for life extensions. They are looking for addressing different parts of that market and different patient pools. And they're also looking for additional intellectual property, right? You also have competing portions of this. Everybody that is very excited in this space are looking for different technologies that can put them one step ahead and get access to better patients. There's fierce competition in terms of pricing. There's fierce competition in terms of patient populations. And then let's not forget the very sophisticated generic players that can bypass even the IP that's being built in this space. And that's a really exciting area of the market because these technologies unlock a lot of different abilities to innovate in this space, gain levels of exclusivity to bring drugs to market, and also even revisit molecules that have long been expired from a patent landscape perspective and have oral versions of them. So there's a lot of dynamics going on in this market, and all with the same intent: get more of these molecules to patients that historically could not or would not take them.
Yeah. I think you mentioned earlier, there are a number of things that drive the commerciality of drugs, and the total addressable market being a big part of that. And as we've discussed, there are many benefits to oral forms in terms of reaching more patients more effectively. Do you think that also the availability of oral formulation extends the ability to overcome some of the geopolitical and logistical barriers to distribution of drugs globally?
Yeah, and I want to take the logistical barriers first. I think that there are parts of the world that want to develop their own medicine and distribute their own medicines. I think we're past the time in the world where people just want a shipment dropped off of finished drug product and they're just going to distribute it. Most of what I would describe as the far-merging areas of the world want to develop and manufacture their own medicines. This is what's quite unique about the capsule-based dosage form, because I would argue it's the simplest one to do that. Very often, and in fact, in the vast majority of cases, all drugs start out in a capsule. API in a capsule, no formulation sophistication, you're doing preclinical work, you're looking for toxicity, etc. And then at a certain point in time, it will transition, and many times it will find its way into different dosage forms. From a developing and a far-merging perspective, it's actually quite simple and straightforward to not have to build the entire unit operations associated with doing direct compression or even more sophisticated tablet-based dosage forms when you can stay within a capsule-based dosage form. And that's at least what we see as both the world's largest manufacturer of capsules, a manufacturer of capsule encapsulation technologies and engineering, as well as somebody who manufactures drugs ourselves. So what I see in those far-merging parts of the world is the genuine interest to include encapsulation technologies locally and to be able to do that without the cold chain challenges that you have of actually just dropping off finished dosage forms, or the sophisticated need to build out entire unit operations where something like an encapsulation unit is actually much more straightforward than the 5 or 6 unit operations needed to produce tablets.
So from that point of view, it's addressing one of those dimensions in terms of removing some of the barriers to access. And I guess also from a commercial perspective, as we kind of touched on earlier, some of the geopolitical barriers and some of the trade barriers that are emerging around the world. The pharma industry relies on a very extended supply chain, and it crosses a lot of borders before it gets to a patient.
Yes. Yes, and I think this is a really important point geopolitically. What we are seeing right now is absolutely a shift in what was a consolidation in many cases and in certain parts of the world for both API manufacturing, excipient manufacturing, and finished dose manufacturing. This is indeed shifting with geopolitics. There is absolutely an interest in onshoring. We see that certainly as a CDMO that's based in the United States, with the clients that we work with that want the medicines in the places that both the clinical trials are going to be done, as well as where the majority of the patients are going to be. But let's not forget how complex this actually is, because you effectively need to onshore all of the different pieces and have robust supply chains associated with all of it. But as you mentioned, in the far-merging areas of the world, well, they also want the ability to manufacture their own drugs, so you're not necessarily beholden to the geopolitics that are ongoing in the world.
Yeah, and there are also, of course, new classes of therapy or areas of clinical research at the moment, particularly with regard to microbiome, of course, which, capsules have got to be the go-to because the best way to get into the gut is orally. Do you see that as being a big growth area in the coming years?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, the microbiome itself is an area that has been scientifically unexplored. And maybe I'm exaggerating with unexplored. It is a absolute hot button area of research, both in research laboratories and universities, all the way through pharmaceutical companies. But to say that this is explored science is absolutely not the case right now. So I think we're going to see a whole new class of medications in this space over the course of the next decades that are really addressing this as we start to explore just how important the microbiome is to human physiology. Now, that being said, talking about technology, these are mostly live biotherapeutics that you're targeting. They are sensitive to shear, they are sensitive to temperature, they are sensitive to UV. Encapsulation generally is the technology that you're going to use. And as a company that obviously we have the entire life cycle of pharmaceutics that we talked about already, we also work in the nutraceutical space, and areas like prebiotics, probiotics, etc., is an area of science that we've actually been working on for quite some time. And there's a lot of learning that can be done in those areas about how to protect live biotherapeutics and deliver them to different parts of the body. And let's not negate what I mentioned before about highly customizing the capsule itself to target certain parts of the gut. So this is absolutely an area of new science. It is one that I believe we are well situated for, and one that we continue to perform research both for ourselves as well as on behalf of our clients.
So there seems to be a lot of exciting new areas that capsules are going to become more important in delivering drugs, or even, let's say, some of the medical device type injection devices. And it seems to me that there are, therefore, a lot of challenges that get to be overcome, but we seem to be breaking down some of those boundaries. And in a risk and reward business, investing in developing oral dosage forms, particularly for biologics, looks like it's a better bet for pharma companies. And there are certainly certain therapeutic areas and areas of research that oral is probably the preferred route of administration. It's also clear that the recent advances in formulation and capsule technology have shown that in combination they can deliver higher levels and potentially clinically viable levels of biologic bioavailability, albeit at the moment in a few classes, and making this mode of administration a much more commercially viable option, I guess, for more therapeutics. Of course, the benefits for pharma companies, the commercial opportunity grows the addressable patient audience. It also, to some degree, provides improved acceptance by patients and also by health providers and health deliverers, and of course expands the health benefits to more patients. It's also been really interesting hearing from you how Lonza Capsugel have pioneered numerous new technologies and continue to partner and seek out those technologies. I didn't realize how many different fronts you were pushing out on, and I know you've lab tested all of those and sort of proven the efficacy and the effectiveness in improving bioavailability and enhancing oral formulation capability, particularly of course with the EmProtect platform, which opens a whole new range of possibilities in terms of different layer combinations and the ability to target very specifically. So this expertise in formulation science, and particularly now you've got Tampa on board as well, as you say, truly makes you an end-to-end player. The ability to bring new innovation, novel technologies to market and actually commercialize them. I think that's a very powerful proposition, particularly when by bringing them so close together, you can kind of collapse that cycle. Also, it's great to hear that you've got a continued commitment to invest in new and emerging technologies. Certainly, from what you're saying, you're starting to partner with some of the people who've innovated in new technology and intend to incubate and work with them to create the next generation of delivery platforms. And by the sound of it, some very clever and very smart technologies to address some of the challenges that at the moment or today seem fairly insurmountable. Thank you, Frank, for a fascinating discussion and very enlightening, and sharing your perspectives on the commercial aspects that affect oral formulation, and also their ability to deliver more therapeutics to more patients. I think we should never forget while we're in this business, ultimately it's to make patients well again. So if you'd like to learn more about Lonza Capsugel's capabilities and how they could perhaps help you develop a viable oral formulation for your API, just scan the QR code at the end of this podcast. And if you'd like to catch up on the previous podcast where we discussed the evolution of oral biologic delivery capabilities, just again follow the QR code. And if you'd like to be kept up to date with all that's happening in and around oral delivery systems, follow Lonza Capsugel on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening today, and I hope to hear from you soon.